Morning, Millie. Have you heard? The all but invisible woman has now disappeared completely.
You what?
That crazy woman who spent the pandemic hiding in a bunker in Skipton House, occasionally issuing meaningless drivel on Zoom seminars or workshops, whatever she called them, telling us we could only treat 2 patients a day, has left.
I haven't heard from her for so long. I thought she'd gone anyway.
Apparently, she's been quite busy recently, but rather than doing her job, word has it she's been hard at it, not bothering about us, but furthering her own career. Actually, it turns out she has at least 3 other jobs as well as being CDO, which is supposed to be a full-time job anyway. All she seemed to do was dream up totally unworkable plans that never achieve anything, even telling practices they couldn't work and had to close for 3 months, which it turns out she didn't have the power to do anyway. Is Dr. Baird in yet?
Dunno. I ain't seen him.
When you do, can you tell him I'd like a word with him?
Righto.
This is a Dale dental practice. All our receptionists are busy at the moment. Please try again later.
Hello, Millie. Is Dr. Video in?
Yeah, he's been here quite a while, I think.
Did he have a good holiday?
I don't know. Didn't ask him. Tell me, what do you think of that new nurse?
Shirley? Haven't had much to do with her, really. She works with Cressida most of the time, I think. Why do you ask?
The other nurses say they think she's a bit odd, that's all. They say they don't feel comfortable when she's in the changing room with them.
If you're concerned, why not mention it to Dr. Video?
Yeah, I will when I get a chance. Oh, by the way, he said he'd like to have a word with you when you get in.
That sounds ominous. What time's my first one due?
9:30.
OK, I'll pop in and see him first.
Today, we're talking about mental illness and people who are struggling with their feelings. Honestly, Charlie, why does everyone seem to have mental health problems these days? It's got to a point where if you haven't got a mental health problem and are struggling with your feelings, there must be something wrong with you.
Don't you find sometimes you struggle with your feelings, Rufus?
Well, there are times when I feel like strangling Mrs. Scoggins. I manage to restrain myself, but sometimes it's a struggle.
It seems to be ever since the pandemic, don't you think?
More the lockdowns, you mean? People seem to have lost the will to work and think you can just stay home and not bother going into the office or wherever anymore. Getting signed off because you've got a mental health problem is the perfect excuse. I mean, nobody can actually show there's really nothing wrong with you, can they?
Millie was saying the other staff have some sort of a problem with the new nurse.
Jesus Christ, it's always something, isn't it? What's supposed to be wrong with her? She seems all right to me. They should try interviewing people for a job. There are so many things you can't ask them. It's like walking on eggshells. Even then, when you've decided on someone, you've got to write to all the others who didn't get the job and give them the bad news. There are even fucking CQC compliance rules for that. Because in this politically correct woke world, you daren't say anything that could get you accused of discrimination, even though the whole point of an interview is to discriminate between those you want to employ and those you don't. So you have to say something like, "Dear Miss Wimple, thank you for coming to see us. We enjoyed our discussion with you, but felt that another candidate matched the requirements of our job description and person specification more closely." When what you really mean is it was impossible to decide between applicants, so we threw the application forms in the air and gave the job to the one whose form landed the right way up.
Millie said you wanted to see me about something.
Word has reached me you've started to take on new NHS patients again.
Only a couple, Rufus.
You do realise that you're helping the government with their ridiculous claim that there are more NHS dentists than ever now, don't you?
But it's only a couple.
Doesn't matter. Government figures give the same weight to your 2 patients as they do to someone treating NHS patients full time, just so they can keep the lie it's the envy of the world going a bit longer. So stop doing it. We're not running a bloody charity.
Do you want another coffee?
Oh, yes. Thanks, Millie. Millie, Dr. Baird told me there seems to be a problem between the other staff and Shirley.
Other girls don't feel comfortable with her. Think she's a bit butch.
Really? I hadn't noticed.
Well, they think she's a bit masculine.
Are you suggesting she identifies with a gender at variance with the one assigned to her at birth?
You what?
You saying she's a man?
Yep.
Well, male dental nurses are not unusual these days, so what it really boils down to is you don't like the way she dresses. That's not really something we can complain about these days, is it?
Well, we think you ought to say something to her.
Like what? Excuse me, Shirley, are you by any chance a bloke? You know I can't do that. She'd be on the phone to the CQC, GDC or some union or other straight away. You'll have to tell them I'm sorry, but there's not really anything I can do. God almighty, if it's not one thing, it's another.
Millie said you wanted another coffee.
Ah, thanks, Shirley. Tell me, how long have you been with us now?
Just over 5 weeks now.
And how are you getting on?
Fine. I like the job here.
Getting on with the rest of the staff?
Oh, yes. They seem a nice friendly lot.
Good. Well, if you ever have any problems, let me know.
I just saw Shirley coming out. Did you have a word with her?
She's doing fine. I don't give a fuck what gender she identifies as if she can do the job. Quite honestly, Charlie, with all the extra rights women are demanding at work, they're making themselves virtually unemployable these days anyway. I'd rather employ more trans women. They don't need maternity pay and time off for antenatal appointments, and if that's not bad enough, the latest bit of lunacy is women think they ought to have time off if they're going through a course of IVF, for Christ's sake. Trans women don't get premenstrual tension, postmenstrual depression, and don't ask for time off to deal with the menopause. They seem to me to be eminently more attractive as employees than women.
What gender do you identify as, Rufus?
Come on, Charlie. Don't tell me after all this time you haven't noticed I'm a dog.